Clint told me this. It ain't about recruiting, it's about evaluating. Anybody can throw that logo on the shirt and go sit in the gym. And hey, I'm representing, I'll get a team here, Texas State, whoever, San Marcos. All right. But the ability to evaluate kids is it's a hard trait to have. It really is. And they all don't work out, but evaluation is more important than recruiting.
Hi, I'm Corey Baldwin.
And I'm Daniel Bowles. We're back with the new Off the Beaten Path, a podcast for basketball coaches living in obscurity, working in obscurity, even in those who have made it out of obscurity.
And it's a place where storytelling is told. Some of them are even true, believe it or not. We do a little learning, some connecting, reconnecting, and food for thought. And my favorite part, food for the belly. And today we have a Georgia legend. He might not have started out that way, but he has definitely ended up that way and has had an unbelievable program in Augusta. For old heads will know it, but new heads will know it, as they were in the championship game this year in Division II, and that wasn't their first visit. We're real honored to have Dip Metris here today with us. Appreciate you joining us, Dip.
Appreciate you having me. I'm a Southerner by heart now, I guess.
Do you eat grits yet?
Yes, I do, actually. It used to be called oatmeal. Now it's called grits. So
I love it. All right, well, let's jump in this thing right away. Kind of walk us through your path. How did you get started in basketball?
Whoa. Grew up playing in the Washington, D.C. area, Northern Virginia, Fairfax, Virginia. Played for a legendary high school coach named Red Jenkins. Go way back now. I graduated high school in 1984. I was fortunate to be on the team with Tommy Amaker. Tommy Amaker was the starting point guard up until 1983. So needless to say, I was not the starting point guard until 1984. So played for a great high school coach, Red Jenkins, and played in a fabulous area in the Washington, D.C. area.
And did you go on and play college?
Yes. So the story is this. In 1984, I'm playing in probably the second year of the Beach Ball Classic, maybe the third year of the Beach Ball Classic. Clint Bryant was then the assistant coach at Clemson. He had recruited Tommy real hard, knew my high school coach real well. It was my senior year I was playing, and picked up the phone, which means go to a phone book or go to a phone booth. I went to a phone booth. He called then coach Eddie Payne, who was head coach at Belmont Abbey, and said, there's a short little white kid that plays at W.T. Woodson that can really play. The next day, Coach Payne drove over and saw me play my senior year. Actually, as I think back on it, Steve Litton, which is an old name, was at Anderson Junior College, also met with me while I was at the Beach Ball Classic. And from there, went and played at Belmont Abbey College, all because of Clint Bryant, because Clint Bryant played at Belmont Abbey in the 70s for Bobby Hussey, which are all old names. These people don't even know who these guys are anymore.
Belmont Abbey, man, what a basketball history it has.
Al McGuire coached there. That's just going to go way back for some people. I was very fortunate to play for two college coaches, Eddie Payne, who just recently passed away last couple of years. That was the only college coach at the time that has been a head coach at every single level. Division 1, 2, 3, NAI, junior college. I don't know if he was head coach Truett McConnell, Corey.
Yeah.
Had Mitchell Wiggins, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to mess up some of these names. So anyway, I played for Coach Payne for 2 years, and then Kevin Eastman took over. And fast forward Kevin Eastman's career. Kevin Eastman and Eddie Payne were coaching in the Pac, whatever we're going to call it now, the Pac-10 at the same time. Coach Eastman was at Washington State, and Coach Eastman was at Oregon State. So played for two coaches that, to say the least, know a lot about college basketball.
Wow. I did not realize you played for Eddie Payne and were recruited by him. So you ended up coaching against Eddie later. I don't want to ruin where we're going, but how was that, coaching against the guy you played for?
Weird, I guess is the best way to describe it. Both of them were great college coaches. And sadly, I was just at a funeral for a teammate of mine this past week that played for both coaches. And let's go back. How was it playing? Coach Payne, all he talked about was pivoting and running the flex, pre-shot clock era. I probably had 2 entries into the flex, grind it out. Kevin Eastman had 37 entries into the flex and had a situation for every situation that can occur. Let's put it that way. So two completely different guys, but great coaches, great coaches.
So now I know why you have some flex cut stuff floating around in
So my
in
first year as head coach, Corey, I ran the flex, and that's 28 years ago. I ran the flex. I've run a lot of different offenses. But I did run the flex 28 years ago when I was at Belmont Abbey as head coach.
I love it. I love it. So you play at Belmont. At what point did you decide, hey, I think I might coach? Was it before you were at Belmont, or was it while you were at Belmont?
I'm playing college. I mean, y'all, we don't know what we're doing at 18, 19 years old. So at the time, I got in Father Chris said, you have to choose a major. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool taking these classes here, philosophy, theology, all kinds of different classes. Well, you have to determine a major. Well, my roommate, who was best man at my wedding, was a history major. I said, well, I don't want to be a history major because I'll take classes with him. I live with him. There's only 500 students at Belmont Abbey. I said, so I'll be a political science major. So I was a political science major because I thought originally was I'll finish college and go coach high school. We didn't have teacher ed at Belmont Abbey. So I figured I'd be a political science teacher and, coach high school basketball. And that's kind of why I chose political science, to be honest with you, because the classes were on Tuesday and Thursday. I have to go to class on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it was an easy major for me to choose between.
So, Coach, as you're kind of finishing up your playing career and getting the end, what was your first step to get into coaching? What did you do? What opportunity was there for you to get a foot in the door?
What I didn't do was listen to all the people that told me don't do it. Okay, all the same people told you to not to do it. Probably multiple times, don't do it. I think they're still telling us not to do it. So, I graduated college. I was very fortunate to play, like I said, for two great coaches and had some success as a player, not because of me, because of guys I played with. And I said, let's try this college thing. I came from outside of Washington, D.C. I'd never been to Charlotte or outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, Belmont Abbey. I had no idea where I was going. I mean, we joke about it. I called it Catawba. It's Catawba. I had no idea what Catawba meant. I do know this. When I visited Belmont Abbey, I flew down to visit. I sat in the game, and I think it was Belmont Abbey versus Pfeiffer. And I looked around and said, geez, am I good enough to play here? Okay. Because I had no idea how good the player level was I was getting into. So I graduated college. I said, I want to try to do college coaching. And this is 1988. Let's go way back when you have to go see a secretary and you had they were called secretary. Now they're called administrative assistants. You get a little piece of paper that says, this is the person called. So I actually interviewed face-to-face at 3 places. Shawan Junior College for Bob Burke, not Rob Burke, Bob Burke, the bopper, as we called him, the close talker, Bob Burke. And then I interviewed with Rick Scruggs at North Greenville Junior College. Okay. So the 2 interviews I had were Bob Burke at Shawan Junior College and Rick Scruggs at North Greenville Junior College. A little tidbit, when I interviewed at both places, they gave me a piece of advice. Hey, write the coach a note afterwards and stick it in the mailbox before you leave town. Okay, well, first off, at North Greenville, dude, the mailbox was on campus, okay? This is way before the growth of North Greenville. So I literally drove, I go, well, there's the mailbox. I stuck it in there. So both places I interviewed, ironically, were not looking for a 21-year-old kid coming out of college for whatever reason. They were looking for a little more experienced. So then I was kind of stuck in limbo. I was working basketball camps at Davidson. I was working at basketball camps up in the DC area. And I got a call late from a guy named Jack Williams at Newberry College. So I drove down to Newberry, South Carolina. And I know Dave was on a previous podcast. And I had no idea where I was. And I asked Jack, I said, Jack, hey, what do I wear for the interview? I mean, it was summertime. I would just wear a pair of shorts. So I wore a pair of shorts, sat down, had lunch with him, and he offered me the job. I made a whopping $1,500 for 10 months. I lived in the girls' dormitory, ate in the cafeteria, and here's the kicker. I'll never forget it. My first check was $137.50. And I said, they took taxes out on this, you know? So that's how I started coaching. So I started coaching at Newberry College with Jack Williams, who I still keep in touch with this to this day. My first year in coaching, and probably one of my more enjoyable years of coaching, because I was the only assistant now. There was no, there's none of this stuff you see nowadays. Let's just leave it at that. So I was the only guy.
While you were doing it there, did you have any other jobs, or were you just?
Did I ever? Okay, so one of the jobs was to write tickets on campus for people who parked illegally. And Jack said, don't do that. Everyone's getting pissed off at you, okay? Because I'm going to be the guy walking around ticketing people parking in the fire lane. I mowed grass on the side. I actually sold football tickets. Newberry College at the time was the smallest school in the country playing scholarship level football. I thought that was the coolest thing. I went to Belmont Abbey. We had no football. It was just basketball, soccer in the fall. So I kind of did odd jobs. I cut grass, just nothing basically. At that time, they had a school car. You go recruiting, so you could put gas in that car and you just go recruiting. So one of the first kids I ended up recruiting, I remember, was Willie Taylor from Lake City. And I went to watch him play baseball because I went to the beach for the day. I went over there, I went to the beach, laid around, got some sun, then drove over to watch Willie Taylor pitch in a baseball game. So no, it was a great experience. Jack was, and still to this day, one of the greatest human beings I've ever met in my life.
So where did that take you to next? Were you just there the 1 year, or did you?
Yeah, I was there making the whopping $1,500 for the year. And I still do this. I know Teamer talked about this. Jack and I drove to Augusta to watch Augusta practice in the old gym. Okay, nobody even knows where the old gym is now that works here. And Clint Bryant was the coach. He was coaching for 1 year. And he told me, he said, hey, I'm going to hire you someday. Well, dang if it didn't happen 2 weeks later. I had just gotten a raise at Newberry. I got a raise from $1,500 to $3,000 a year. I doubled my salary, which I thought it was, I thought I'd hit the lottery, cutting less grass. So Clint called me and said, hey, come down and interview. So I interviewed Clint and his wife, and Gerald White went out to dinner and had a great interview. And next day, I think he calls me. I wake up in the morning because I spent the night. He said, I want to offer you the job. How soon can you be there? And I said, well, I got to go back and tell Jack. They were saying there was no phones. You didn't pick up a phone. So I went and told Jack, and Jack understood. He was great. And I told the team, and literally put all my stuff in a Mazda 323. I drove down to Augusta. I went to an apartment finding place. I found a place on Baker Avenue, right down from Richmond Academy, where I was living for $265 a month in a furnished apartment, and stayed in that apartment for 5 years, being assistant coaching at then Augusta College.
Man, go ahead.
Weird. I guess weird is the best way to describe it. Yes.
So you've already got, I know we hadn't had him on yet. One day, hopefully we can get him, but you've already had a couple of different stops with Clint Bryant, with college, with, him seeing you when you're in high school, now to this spot. Talk about like what it was like working for him, learning from him, and even, I guess, even now to this day.
Like I tweeted about the other day, like without him, I'm not playing college basketball. I'm realistic enough to know that. Okay. Because, or I might have played at Anderson Junior College, that's back when it was a junior college. I wouldn't have played college basketball without Clint. Pick up the phone and call Eddie Payne. Clint is my guy. Okay. It is all about relationships. I know we all go back in a weird way. We're connected to triangle, three of us. If Clint doesn't call Eddie Payne, I don't play college basketball. If Jack Williams doesn't get in the car and maybe come down and watch a practice, I don't probably coach at Augusta College, and I worked for Clint for 5 years, and, not to fast forward, there was never a major decision in my life that Clint and I didn't discuss. He did a reading at my wedding, had checkered socks on. My wife would remember that. He did a reading at our wedding in Augusta when I came back, when I got married. So now he's the best. And Clint's an old-fashioned guy, old-fashioned recruiter. Trust your eyes. Go see kids play. Know what you're looking for. Is he better than what you have? I heard this years ago, and I'm going to get his name right. The head coach at Providence, Ed Cooley, starts every staff meeting with recruiting. because it is the most important thing. Okay. So if you're going to talk about practice plan, hey, before we start practice plan, let's go over what we did last night recruiting wise. Well, that's really disciplined if you can do that. That's really hard to do. But Clint's, like I said, he's the best, and just retired last week. He's no longer upstairs in his office. So, I'm sure I'll have lunch and breakfast with him, often.
That's awesome. I remember meeting him with Coach G.
Oh,
And I always laugh because he introduced him. Coach G always called me CB. And he would say, CB, let me introduce you to the original CB.
he is the original. It's funny. I ran to CY yesterday or this weekend up at the high school thing. And CY said, if it wasn't for Clint, Clint was recruiting CY for University of Miami. And Clint takes this job. And then CY goes and plays at Georgia Southern. I think CY was going to University of Miami. One thing, Clint, and this is something I still do to this day. If I can't recruit a kid, I pick up the phone and call people and say, listen, I don't need another point guard. Do you need him? If a kid's good enough, he's good enough. But sometimes you just can't use kids. So I still believe, I don't think as coaches we do that enough anymore. Like there's some big secret out there, if it gets late in the process, so many kids without college basketball, I'm not college coaching. So I always say, especially with kids in the DC area, hey, listen, I'll make a phone call to people. Dan Schmatzer at Coker, I got him a couple of guys. I would call Brookman and Anderson. Hey, here's some guys. Some people would listen, some people wouldn't. So, just like I said, Clint is all about relationships, and very lucky to have a relationship with him.
Well, I always say this, the reason all of us got into coaching was we love basketball and we love helping people. I think sometimes, unfortunately, we forget that that's the two reasons.
It is, and very, very true. I mean, when you get down to it, it is about helping people. And I think all of us at some point when we recruit a kid, we see that person in you. Okay. It's just odd. It really is. But you're right. It is about players and relationships. And I know obviously Dave talked about it, but it is so much about that. And to stay have relationships, Jack Williams was the guy I worked for 36 years ago, and we still talk, I just text Gordon Gibbons an article that was written on a game we played against Clayton that Clint had given me when he cleaned out his office. And, typical Gordon got the typical response back, that's why I wore a green coat at Augusta, counteract all the blue. So, the characters of college basketball aren't there anymore, I don't think,
Yeah, that's good stuff. So you were with Clint for 5 years as an assistant at that time, Augusta College, and they were Division I then, correct?
Sure was. So we were Division I. I think it was 5 years right here, maybe 3 or 4 years. And we actually lost in the Big South Championship to Radford. Oliver Pinnell was coaching. Gerald White was the other assistant. And same thing, I'm very close to Gerald to this day. And then Gerald moved on. And then we made the division move back to Division II just because we couldn't afford it financially. Back then, Charleston Southern was Baptist College. Campbell was in our league. Radford was in our league. UNC Asheville with Don Doucette. So we made the move to go back, and I didn't care about levels. All I cared about was coaching. And Clint preached to me, don't be a guy that bounces around. A lot of times in coaches, people feel like you got to be somewhere 2 years or 1 year and move on. I was in Newberry for a year, and I came to Augusta for 5 years. Didn't really have many opportunities. Had Coach Payne, he got the East Carolina job one time, but I couldn't get on staff up there. So had different things when Coach Eastman became the head coach at UNC Wilmington, but just wasn't the guy. Then I didn't understand why he didn't hire me, but I understand now. Like I wasn't ready for that job. I mean, these things are hard to get, head coach jobs.
Correct.
Now, at what point working for Clint did you realize that either you were ready for a head coaching job or you're like, you know what, let's just see what's out there and let's try it?
Well, a couple things. One, I don't think you're ever ready for a head coaching job.
Right.
And this is, I joke about this, and this is going to sound weird. You don't earn the head coaching job. Some joker hands it to you. Okay. Now you earn it through your work a little bit, but so we'll go back. I was at Augusta, and then I had a chance to go work for Byron Samuels at Hampton University in Virginia. Okay. That was Byron's first time as a head coach. Byron had worked for Kevin Eastman at UNC Wilmington and Washington State. I think Byron came right from Washington State to Hampton. He reached out to me. I really knew Byron, but not well. I was making probably $15,000 a year at Augusta at the time, I think, or 16,000 or whatever. So Byron called me to go Division I assistant. So I go up to Hampton. I've never been to Hampton in my life, even though I grew up 3.5 hours from there. I went up there. I was assistant for a year. And I said, you know what? Like, I want to be a head coach, but not because of Byron or Clint or Jack. I want to be a head coach. I was actually on the phone with a guy named Ron Carr, who was then the head coach at Longwood College. And he said, Dip, there's only 2 jobs you're going to get as a head coach in your life. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I'm a Division I assistant at Hampton. I got the HU logo on my shirt looking all cool, you know? And he said, you're only probably going to get the Belmont Abbey job or the Augusta job. And I'm like, oh, surely I'll get, you know, I'll leave Hampton and I'll go to George Mason. And from George Mason, I'll go to Maryland. I'll be the next coach at George Mason or George Washington. Well, I was on a plane. Okay. Oh, golly. Ephraim was his name. I was in Hampton. I had to fly out to Colorado to watch a kid play. And there was ice storms going across the bridge, go to Norfolk Airport. I'm like, geez. Okay. The summer before, I was in a plane actually going to Waco, Texas to watch a JUCO. Matter of fact, it was the end of that year to watch the Region 10, whatever that JUCO is called in Texas, state tournament. And we're on a plane at Baylor. We were flying to Dallas, we're on a plane. That thing started hopping like crazy. And it was like 14 coaches on the plane. And I said, man, I ain't getting back on this plane. I ain't trying to die. You know, so Mike Ellis was then the assistant coach at VCU. He looked at me and he said, man, listen, I'm going to drive back to Dallas the next day. So I drove back to Dallas, flew out of Dallas. And I said, is this really what I want to be doing? Like dying on planes and you know, not dying, but putting my life in jeopardy, going to look at Ephraim in Colorado Junior College out in the middle of nowhere, or do I just want to be a head coach? And ironically, the Belmont Abbey job opens up, and I think Dave alluded to it. Bobby Luce told me it was professional suicide to take the job. Don't take the Belmont Abbey job. It's not the same job that was when Eddie Payne, Kevin Eastman, Bobby Hussey were there. And I didn't care. I just wanted to be a head coach. So Dr. Reedy, who was my athletic director at Belmont Abbey, actually coached Clint Bryant at Belmont Abbey. Dr. Reedy played basketball at Campbell, all right? Was one of the all-time leading rebounders, played at DeMath High School. He brought me to interviews, New York City guy. Hey, you want this job? I'm like, I spilled salad dressing on my tie at the cafeteria. And I said, well, how's the budget? He looked me straight in the eye. He goes, I don't know, good enough to get you all the games. What you worried about all that stuff for? I'm like, you're right. You know, so I had no idea scholarship budgets, no idea what my operational budget. I walked in there and took the job and been a head coach ever since.
Wow, that's a great story. So you go back to where you played. Were there any similarities from when you played, or would you say very few?
The gym hadn't changed. Locker room didn't change. You know, let's see, I was 29 years old, so I left Belmont Abbey. I'd been gone for probably 7 years. Whatever reason, the program was not in good shape. If I remember correctly, I got the job in May, but couldn't get paid till July or whatever it was. I was just signing dudes, you know, from all over the place. And, you know, just kind of put together a team. It really wasn't a program yet. But the similarities was the Belmont Abbey has a monastery. The monks, I always say when I worked at Belmont Abbey, was unique. Augusta's different. What makes Belmont Abbey unique is there's these monks that walk around the campus smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. That's their school, okay? Some of those, Father John came to my press conference. You saw me play and then came to my press conference. You know, Brother Paul was a member of the community, monastic community when I played and I coached. So Father Chris was my academic advisor and teacher and was still there when I came back and played. But the biggest difference was we didn't have any good players. Like it was a bad situation. We had bad talent. And you know, in the words of Clint Bryant, ain't about the X's and O's, it's about the Johnny and Joes, man. So it's time to start recruiting. So.
And it looks like from following your records there, it took you a couple of years, but once you got it rolling, you guys sustained a good bit of success right there. Your last, what, 5-6 years?
Yeah. So what happened was we were 2 losing seasons my first 2 years as head coach. And fortunately, we haven't had losing seasons since, and we were 7-20 and 10-17. The year I was 10-17, I went to the conference semifinals. I tell every single head coach this, and they look at me like I'm the biggest idiot in the history of mankind. I went to the conference semifinals. It was 10-17. It was played at the Charlotte Hornets practice site. And Barton, Queens, Longwood, maybe Mount Olive. Don't quote me on that. Who was in the Final Four? And I sat there and said, I ain't got but like 1 or 2 guys that can start on any of these teams. Okay. So I said, I got to figure out like how to get starters. All right. So I had a good core of players, but there's a difference between playing college basketball and playing on a championship level team, So that was one of the best. I always tell every coach saying, don't, nowadays leave your phone, just sit there as a fan and look and go, man, like I'm way off, in order to win a championship in this league. So, but yeah, recruiting and keeping guys in our program was the key to us getting it going at Belmont Abbey.
Where did you mainly draw your guys from? I know you were Virginia, DC, Maryland, all those areas. Was that where you were recruiting, or did you start recruiting North Carolina and some other things?
It's a great question. A lot of North Carolina is partly how the schools were packaged, how the financial aid's packaged. I started recruiting the DC area because the same thing I said, is there a fool like me that's willing to come 6.5, 7 hours to go to this little place called Belmont Abbey? But what I found out is this: if you have scholarship money, okay, and we've all worked at different places, if you can finance kids' education, you can find a player, okay? Because you can go back in your coaching career. I can go back to some of the bad teams that were in the CVAC at the time, and I would go, how the heck did that guy get to this place? If you got scholarships, you can get players, okay? So I kind of made a conscientious effort to recruit Washington, D.C. area. I hadn't delved into the international market yet, was getting ready to do that. And recruited North Carolina very hard. So my first championship team at Belmont Abbey, if I get it correct, the very first great player I got at Belmont Abbey is a kid named Israel Sturdivant, who played at Lewisburg Junior College for Enid Drake. It came down to Belmont Abbey and UNC Pembroke, and John Haskins was the head coach at UNC Pembroke men at the time. And Israel's girlfriend at the time was a softball player, so I convinced the softball coach to recruit her at Belmont Abbey. So it was kind of a 2-for-1 deal. But my first championship team at Belmont Abbey, I'm trying to think, my starting point guard, I had to give them Saluda, Virginia, Charlotte, Hope County, all over the place. Wherever I could find a player, got to sit in gyms. One of the best players I ever recruited, I went to recruit somebody else and fell in love with another kid. And that's happened so many times. I went to recruit Earl Grant when he was at Spartanburg Methodist. Gannon Baker, name dropper, was my assistant coach. And it's like, this is the guy we want to recruit, Earl Grant. So I drive down and watch Spartanburg Methodist play Lewisburg at Spartanburg Methodist. And I had recruited Spartanburg Methodist when I was at Newberry because Jim Johnson was the coach. Gary Edwards was the coach then at Barton College, okay?
Wow.
So anyway, I'm watching Earl Grant play, and I said, this kid can't shoot. And I said, who's this other kid, Israel Sturdivant from Polkton, North Carolina? Well, years later, we ended up recruiting Israel, and now Earl's the coach at Boston College. I still tell him to this day, he still couldn't shoot good enough to play for me. So Israel is the first good player I got at Belmont Abbey. He was actually, I think Streets Smith Junior College All-American. And the only reason he came to Belmont Abbey is because it was just us, and he was just slightly built, 5'10", 155 pounds. Really good player, though.
It's amazing how many good junior college players during that era would end up at Division II.
Yes, the academic rules were a little different. Israel was actually a good student. I think it's like anybody, man. Like Clint taught me this. It ain't about recruiting, it's about evaluating. Anybody can throw that logo on the shirt and go sit in the gym. And hey, I'm representing I'll get a team or Texas State, whatever, San Marcos. All right. But the ability to evaluate kids is, it's a hard trait to have. It really is. And they all don't work out, but evaluation is more important than recruiting.
Knowing where you are and what fits and all that fun stuff, which you had to do with Belmont, I'm sure, Belmont Abbey. How hard was it to leave there when you finally decided, hey?
Well, I'll go back. Okay. So when I was head coach at Belmont Abbey, I was making $28,000 a year. At Hampton, I was making $33,000. So I took a pay cut to go. Ironically, as we all get older, Hampton matched dollar for dollar in retirement thing, but that's a whole nother issue, So I take the job at Belmont Abbey, $28,000 a year. When I left Belmont Abbey 8 years old, I was the compliance coordinator and the men's basketball coach, making $33,000. Okay. But I knew at Belmont Abbey that because I played there, it was very difficult. This is before transfer portal to keep kids in a place where there's only 500 or 600 students. Now we were able to do that. And the job that actually Francis Marion's job was opened up. That was the one I really wanted at one point. And I interviewed at Lander and did not get the Lander job. I went to Bruce Evans. And yeah, funny you said. So Bruce gets the job, and then I called Clint. I thought I had the job. I was in Washington D.C. recruiting when Jeff May called me and said, "Hey, where are you?" I said, "I'm in Washington D.C. getting ready to go into St. John's High School. Hey, I need you to meet you tomorrow halfway." I'm like, "Well, I'm in D.C. I can get back." So I drove back to Belmont, got home, told my wife I'm meeting with the athletic director at Atlanta the next day for dinner or lunch. And 7 o'clock, the phone rings. It's Jeff May's like, "Hey, Jeff, I'm going a different direction." I'm like, "What? What do you mean you're going a different direction? I just drove back from D.C. I'll hire another guy." Well, the first phone call I made was to Clint Bryant and told him. And this was from house to house phone. There was no cell phones then, So he's like, "Yeah, don't worry, it'll all work out in the long run." Well, then what? 4 weeks later, the job at Augusta opens up. And, I get that job in whatever year it was. Bowles probably has it in front of you a long time ago.
I don't have your stuff pulled up now, but
Okay.
But you make that move. How was it coming to Augusta after being the assistant and then coming in as now as the head coach?
Different. Augusta's a different place. When I go back, when I was interviewing at Lander, matter of fact, you had Dave on there. We lost at Belmont Abbey to Pfeiffer in the semifinals in sunny, beautiful due west South Carolina against Erskine. Okay. We lost that game, and I got in the car and I came and watched the Peach Belt tournament. And Corey, you had to be an assistant. Gordon was playing Kennesaw.
Oh,
Herbert was playing somebody else. It wasn't Augusta.
Don't remind me of that game. That was a rough.
Okay, but I think it was the semifinals. It was the year Kennesaw won a national championship. I think.
No, it'd been the year before.
Oh, the year before. That's right.
We won the regular season, swept Kennesaw, and lost in that game, and we had to lead. Jay fouled out he had 4 charges in that game, push-off fouls.
All right, so I'm watching the Kennesaw Clayton game, and I'm like, these don't look like the dudes I'm coaching at Belmont Abbey. Like, guys are a little bit different level now. So, and look, and I firmly believe this, when you have a championship level team like we had at Belmont Abbey, or at the time Longwood, when Leader was there, or Dave was at Pfeiffer, or Bart was at Queens the first time, those teams can play against Peach Belt teams. I firmly believe that, okay? Because championship teams are championship teams. However, I looked out there and said, we ain't got guys with this much size, okay? There was a size differential. There was an athleticism differential. So I remember sitting there in the game going, well, if I ever get a job in this league, I got to get some dudes, somehow. Yeah. And I ended up getting the job at Augusta, came here as assistant, took over the program. There were 3 players in the program at the time: Clarence Brown, Jason Mills, and Dean Bremner. And signed a bunch of guys and had a good first year, I guess. And, just been here 18 years later. I'm still banging away. Let me go back, because I know you're behind this. When I took over the Augusta program, there was apathy at Augusta University. All right. The A stood for apathy. When I went out there at tip-off, we were playing Winston-Salem State. My man Snake was the head coach of Winston-Salem State at Christmas time. December 18th, I counted, there was 37 people at the game. And I'm like, what have I got myself into? Because at Belmont Abbey now, we could get some people in the stands. There were creative ways of doing it. So there was apathy here. And our program didn't change, to be honest with you, until we played Gordon Gibbons and we beat Gordon on this floor when he was nationally ranked. We were nationally ranked. They were nationally ranked. And all of a sudden, apathetic Augusta, all of a sudden started getting some fan support. And partly because Gordon was so crazy and wears green coat, and I was a madman as well. So I was just a younger version of him. But yeah, but one
I
for
told
Gordon.
somebody that the other day.
What's that?
I told somebody that the other day. They don't realize how wild you were on the sideline. Not that you've calmed down totally, but you were even crazier at one time.
Oh yeah, that's an understatement. Let me, because I know you like stories. So I heard Dave talk about it. Dave was a Pfeiffer. Bart was a Queens. I was at Belmont Abbey. Leader was a Longwood. Okay, 4 like weird guys. All right, wired all differently, wired to win. So we're playing Queens at Belmont Abbey. I convinced our Dean of students to let them serve beer outside the gym in a keg and have dinner there. So the dinner was outside of the gym, hamburgers and hot dogs, and a keg was out there. Okay.
I love it.
So in comes Queens. All right. And Queens and Belmont Abbey are 15 miles apart. We hated them, they hated us. You know, I know it's politically incorrect to say hate people. Bull crap. You're allowed to hate your rival. Okay. When we were building our program and Dave talked about Queens' gym, my wife was holding my daughter in her lap and she got to go to the bathroom. And the guy said, "You're not allowed to have your seat back." And Jeff Brookman's dad, he goes, "Oh, she's going to have a seat right back right here. I guarantee you when she comes and sits down." Because that thing was sold out, you know, during the women's game, Belmont Abbey Queens, because Queens only seated 200 people. So they come over to Belmont Abbey. Well, Dave's brilliant mind, he's playing at Erskine. He didn't tell the story. He stopped in at the Belmont Abbey Queens game with his team. So they come walking in our gym, and our students are drunk as can be. And we beat Queens, and our fans start yelling at the Pfeiffer fans, you're next to their players. Lo and behold, the Pfeiffer players all came and got drunk that night at Belmont Abbey campus, because that's all people did at Belmont Abbey, get drunk. So this is the best part of the story. So we end up playing Queens back at Queens. Okay, like I said, seats 300 people. Right before tip-off, I look up and I see Roger Ayers, Mike Eads, and I want to say LB Wood, who were 3 college referees. All right. And I look up, I said, what y'all doing here? And he said, "Man, we just called the Winthrop Radford game. We ain't missing this one for nothing." Okay. So Mike Eads, who's called more Final Foods, and Roger Ayers sat down with popcorn at the scorer's table and that little Cracker Jack box, Belmont Abbey Queens. And what made that rivalry so special was Belmont Abbey at the time and Queens, the soccer teams didn't like each other. Now, we didn't have baseball, only Queens had baseball. So it was just a reason to enjoy the spirits of Belmont Abbey liquor when we played. So, but ironically, 3 referees came in who are now big time referees, came and sat in the front row or sat at the scorer's table to watch that game after they called it a Division I game.
So you mentioned it earlier. We've been talking crazy stories here and talked about you being crazy on the sideline. So you sent us some pictures of some of your different suits.
Yeah.
And you know, you're awesome on social media for the guys that follow you on Twitter. Talk about what you're like on the sideline and your Twitter persona, like how it all ties together with your basketball.
Okay. So if you're going to have a whiteout, I really, really, really get mad at college coaches when they have a whiteout. And let's say the game, let's not use Patino. Let's say Georgia's playing Arkansas in a whiteout. Well, the head coach of Georgia can't come out in a black suit. Like, what's the sell? It's a whiteout. Okay. So when I first did that, they said I looked like Boss Hogg from Dukes of Hazzard. Okay. My wife sent you the pictures, or my daughter. I don't know how to do all that stuff. And she says, I hate that picture. You look like an idiot. Okay. So I wore a white suit for a whiteout. All right. The Jaguar print, the school said it's going to be Jag Night. And I said, I need to come up with something. So I wore that Jaguar outfit. And of course, I don't put it on in the office, which is not an office. It's an equipment room right next to my locker room. I don't put it on until I go in the locker room. And our players look at me like, what is wrong with this guy? Okay. So you do it. Why have a whiteout? Rick Pitino's the one that did it. He that's where I got it. He wore the white suit. Now he changed out of it because he sweat through it. I don't have that big of a budget now. I ain't bought the suit. The local guy gives me the white tuxedo to wear. So no, I've always kind of believed in if you're going to do it, like the head coach has got to do it. And you know, I've been known to do some crazy things on the sidelines, but my outfits are part of it.
I love it. I love it. Now tell us the Easter Bunny story. That's my favorite one.
Oh, golly, years ago, they bought an Easter Bunny outfit for my wife's family. And I had to be the Easter Bunny because I was the youngest guy in the family, I guess, at the time. So I wore this Easter Bunny outfit. My daughter and nieces and nephews were all younger. And I would dress up and they'd take pictures of Easter Bunny. So I'm the only college coach in the country that owns an Easter Bunny outfit. To this day, if you see an Easter Bunny picture on my wife's Facebook or daughter, my players come to our house. We have an Easter celebration, the ones that are in town, and I always put the Easter outfit on and I take pictures. I did it this past year. So you have a 7'1" Tyshawn Crawford standing there with me in an Easter Bunny outfit. And yeah, it's just something I've always done. My wife and daughter get a kick out of it. And I haven't worn it for a game. Maybe I need to do that. I need to wear that for a game. So.
But you missed your chance when COVID pushed the season back. That could have been a year where maybe Easter fell off.
Exactly. So, but I've always believed as a college coach, your job is to enhance atmosphere, to do things. You know, I'm big about getting student involvement, doing things. You know, anything anybody asks me, I'll do it. And you know, if I got to wear a Jaguar outfit, you know, down at Leader's place because I'm tight with Leader, I broke out the Jaguar print shoes and Jaguar print shirt this year just for Barksdale, to be honest with you, because I know what's in Barksdale's cup sitting on the front row. Okay, it ain't Diet Coke, that's for sure.
Well, I saw it, you know, firsthand. Obviously, the Peach Belt had so many coaches that they had brought in with personalities, and so many that had, you know, won at all levels. When you first came into the Peach Belt, you know, I know you mentioned like seeing the size of the guys before you got in it, but once you got in it, I mean, I know how it is as coaches, man. We don't think of ourselves any different than any other coach, but did you look at the resumes a little bit or the bios of the league you were getting in and go, ooh, there's pretty good coaches in this league? You
know, way back, I was 18 years ago, we used to have a press conference for the Peach Belt at the Sheraton in Augusta. I don't know if Gord made you be the driver for him.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, you were Brett Buchanan there, so I had to be Gordon's driver for the day. And I remember Gordon getting up and speaking at it, and he goes, you know, in this Peach Belt, there are coaches that have been to the NCAA tournament. Okay, well, I've been fortunate enough to been to the NCAA tournament at Belmont Abbey a few years, and you looked around Herbert Green at Columbus, you know, Tony Ingle, Gordon, Eddie Payne, upstate won the league at the time. Terry Sellers had been to a Final Four at Georgia College. Trying to think of the coach at Armstrong State was at that time. You know, so Burkhammer, okay. Lander was Chipper Bagwell, who had gone to the Elite Eight, okay. So you look around that room, and you know, Leader and I joke about it all the time. When Leader got in the league, he looked around the room and said, I knew who the dumbest one. I knew who can't coach, you know, in this league. That's what Leader would always say. He's going to get his guys to play hard. And you know, those guys were called a few timeouts. Let's just put it that way. And you know, for whatever reason, they coached our level for a long time. And I realize now I'm kind of become the old guy in my league. Now that Chris left, when Chris Faulkner left, Chris wasn't in our league when I first got here either at North Georgia. So I've seen the league change, but there are definitely some coaches now. There were some characters. Herbert Green. You know, I respected Herbert because Herbert used to always have a coaching clinic. I have my coaching clinic to this day, basically as Herbert has it, or had it. And I remember when Herbert passed away, I was the one that called the Peach Bell and said, I think we should name the coach of the year after. And I got a little pushback. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, this is the coach's coach.
Yeah.
Well, there's procedures, blah, all that stuff you have to deal with nowadays. And they said, I don't think it's fair they should name it after Coach from Columbus. And Clint said, Dip is the one that said it. It wasn't Robert that said they should name the coach of the year after Herbert. It was Dip that said it, And I don't know what the Peach Belt's going to do, but they're going to need to name something after Clint Bryant. The guy has been he's been an athletic director at Augusta longer than the Peach Belt's been in existence. So, I do respect coaches and very fortunate coach, in my 26-year coaching, a lot of great coaches.
Well, you brought up a great point, and I was kind of going to go there with that question. That was going to be my next one. So you saw it coming. You got the point guard vision still, I guess. But you were kind of a young gun or a guy coming in. Now you're the kind of the figurehead of the league, or the torchbearer, however you want to word it. You're the older guy, is a ruder way to say it. But you put in a long tenure and you've won a lot. Do coaches now, I know they do out of league, but in league, do you get a lot of guys who come to you and, maybe for advice and different?
That's a great question, Corey. I have my coaching clinic. I invite everybody to come. You could be a coach of my league. You've gone, Gaines used to come up from Georgia College. I'll invite Aquino. When Drew is at Lander, I don't care who comes to my coaching clinic. I really don't. I think everybody has their own board of advisors, I guess, their own little board of trustees. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not going to ever be involved in the decision-making that's going on at Georgia College, North Georgia. I know the coaches, but they're going to run their programs differently. I've been in our league long enough to know that, like, some things are cycling back through on how to run a conference tournament, how to do this, or should we, do this, should we do that? 2 years ago, I brought up, who was the coach at Georgia perimeter for years? Alfred Barney. So Barney had the great line. Why can't we vote for our own players for player of the year? You can vote for yourself for president of the United States. Okay? Yeah. So I brought it up to the Peach Belt 3 years ago. Why can't we vote for our own players for player of the year? Well, that's not right. Why? Well, and they gave me a bunch of gibberish, and I did use a Barney line. I could vote for myself for president of the United States, but I can't vote for Tyshawn to be player of the year. Well, I've always believed in, like, if a guy deserves player of the year, like, he deserves it, like, give it to him. And, I some things I'm starting to hear cycle back. But when I joined as Peach Belt 18 years ago, the athletic directors were basketball coaches. Mm-hmm. Okay. Herbert Green. All right. Gordon was controlling the joystick at Clayton. I can guarantee you that. This league was formulated for basketball. All right. And, sometimes they don't like to hear that, but it kind of was formulated because of basketball. It wasn't formulated for all those other sports. And like I said, I am the old guy now, but I guess they just want to beat me more.
That's pretty good right there.
Now, coaches, we're talking about all these changes in the Peach Belt and different schools, different coaches, all that sort of stuff. How have you guys, and this is really, you and Corey have both kind of dealt with this. How have you stayed so consistent? You've changed names, 3 times, changed colors? Yeah. How have you guys stayed as kind of the torchbearer in the league, on the national level?
Well, I think good players. Okay. A guy asked me the other day when I was up at the high school event, how have you had success? Players, and players. Okay. We've been very fortunate to get some guys here that come in here that weren't good and became All-Americans. We rolled the dice on a few international players that are jerseys are retired and player of the year types. You got to get players, I can say this because Dave's a friend of mine. I don't have a system, man. Like, I'm not one of those system guy. I'm not a culture guy. My brother's a great high school coach. He's played every different style. I've played, I was a flex guy. I was actually a flex guy when I first came to Augusta. And then I became a 3 out, 2 in guy, then Bill Self, and 4 out. So it's just about getting good players and developing them. I'm very fortunate to have good assistants. the most successful college coaches have one thing in common. When you go to gyms, you still see them in the gyms recruiting. Okay. So, you know, you guys were at the high school events, and Corey obviously sees a different angle from the junior college thing. Guys that are good junior college recruiters as head coaches are in Corey's gym. They're not, their assistant may be in there once, but he's going there. I'm not a big JUCO recruiter. I go to Corey's place on occasion. So I don't know what to look for in JUCO. So I just think as head coaches, you have to be really, 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 really involved in the recruiting process. And the other thing is, a coach named Bo Brickles, in my very first coaching clinic at Belmont Abbey, gave this advice to Brad Burnell, who was the head coach at Wilmington. He said, replace yourself. In other words, when you become a head coach, make sure your assistant is doing the things you used to do, okay, as assistant coach. Now, I do know this. Matter of fact, Dave, again, we've had a number of assistants. If my assistant's strength is player development, then he does more player development. If his strength is the weight room, he does more of the weight room stuff. If his strength is X and O and boxing, doing all the stuff on the computer, he does that. If his weakness is, whatever his weakness is, I'll try to take upon that mold, so. I guess that's a roundabout way of answering both. Get good players and coach them up, I guess.
Now you mentioned it, how much you changed the whole, I guess, involvement of the community down there in Augusta, and a lot of that winning has a lot to do with it, I'm sure. But what are some of the things you did out in the community? I know you're kind of known as the godfather of Augusta now. A lot of people will even call you for players in Augusta, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, Corey, I've stolen things from other people. We started this education game that's been on the shelf now for 2 years. That's strictly Old Dominion women's basketball started, okay, years ago as a scope. So Leader jokes, when I leave the Peach Belt, they're going to call the education game after me because everybody's kind of copied it, okay? We've done education games, alumni games. I've done everything. I've sold, when I first got here, I had a used car somebody donated to me, and we gave away a car at a game, okay? And people are like, what? No, we are giving you the keys. You don't have to make a shot. So we gave away 2 years, two different times. Matter of fact, I might try to do it this year. 2 different times we have given away a car at our first home game, and you walk out with the keys. I think about redo that. So I've tried to do things to get Al McGuire, still from Old Belmont Abbey guy. When you walk out of the gym as a coach, you see the corner bleachers occupied, you've done your job. When I walked out there late, after a few years here, and I looked up and see the gym filled up, I feel like, hey, somebody's here to support us. And, our crowds are known to be a little vocal. We travel the NCAA tournament. We don't travel alone. We got some fans that are quite into it. So I think part of it is, hopefully the passion I bring. And, I was a madman for a while, and I was told to calm down. I got reprimanded. I can give you a copy of all the letters that I've got from Peach Belt offices. Don't do this. My first year here, Marv Venner wrote me an article, wrote me a letter, and said I incited a riot, okay? Because I called back-to-back timeouts in the semifinal game against Eddie Payne. Actually, they beat us in the semifinals. Well, the game was over, and I called 3 straight timeouts. And I had everybody in the arena stand up and start clapping, okay? Because I'd argued that the referees called 4 straight charges on us, kind of like you said, with your guy.
Yeah.
And the memo said I incited a riot. I said, well, there had to be more than like 500 people to have a riot. Something. But I've been known to do some crazy things, and it's all part of the show, I guess.
And Coach, I think a lot of people who are listening, I know we did, followed y'all's run this year, and just seeing the crowds and all that. How crazy is the NCAA Division II tournament where you're playing teams the first couple rounds that you have great familiarity with, played them 3 times? Like, how challenging is that?
I don't know how many NCAA tournaments I've coached in. It's a struggle at our level. It happened all the time. Very first one, I was at Belmont Abbey. We played up at IUP, so we didn't play anybody we had seen all year. We were the only team to make it from our league. I really wish the NCAA would cross sections with Valdos's region, or even the North Carolina region with Fayetteville State, CIAA, West Virginia. It's awful. We've been fortunate to play in 2 national championship games. And I would argue the teams that we beat in the Elite Eight to go to the national championship were just as good as the teams that we lost to in the national championship. And it's, this year, if I think it was correctly, we avoided it because we played Belmont Abbey, which is where I played, and we played Pembroke, who we hadn't played all year, and we played Queens. But Flagler and Georgia College and somebody else from our league were staring at us, a possible opponent. It's probably the worst thing about Division II. You get in the regional tournament. We played Aiken for the 4th time in, 4 times, like 3 straight years in a row, I think, for a while. So that's the only thing. That's the only negative of the NCAA tournament, to be honest with you.
And as speaking of Aiken, I was going to kind of ask that, did that rival match your teams?
Queens and Belmont Abbey, yes and no. Us and Aiken had a good rivalry. That's an understatement. I can joke and call him Vince Sanity was there. Okay, at Vince who's now at Clayton. We were both good. They were really good too, and it was a good rivalry because we were 20 miles apart. The difference is we're both basically commuter schools, so there was some distaste between the schools, but it wasn't ugly. Belmont Abbey Queens games were ugly. Like, it was ugly. It was personal. Like soccer players wanted to fight each other and stuff in the stands, so you didn't have that. I do remember playing Aiken here, for a couple times when the game was sold out before the game. We went over there and played in front of probably estimated 3,700 people in a regular season game. And I do remember a week later, we played in a Peach Belt final championship game, and people thought it was going to be more of a crowd, but it wasn't because it was a Sunday and the Aiken students were gone. So it was still a good crowd. We played Aiken here for the regional championship that one year. There were people lining up to get tickets beforehand. They were buying tickets beforehand. That's how we have season ticket holders. People wanted to guarantee their seats at the game, for the Aiken game or the Clayton game. People would, for my wife's friends, they would come put their coat on the seat and then go to Villartas across the street and have their margaritas and then come to the game juiced up a little bit. So, but no, it was a great rivalry, but it didn't rival that because it's the atmosphere of the schools. But it was very good, very good rivalry.
I love it. All right, one more question before we get to the lightning round here. With all your accomplishments, I know you've had a lot of almost chances and maybe even some that we don't know of and all that. Do you think, and I'm not trying to put you in the hot seat, but is Augusta probably where you end up?
I think so. When I was younger, a little bit younger here, I had the chance to phone interview or Skype or whatever these things we're doing with a couple different colleges. It didn't work out. But I've been coaching 26 years now, 18 here. I'm good staying here. Financially, I'd love to get one of these Division I jobs, but I'm realist. I'm not for everybody. Gordon Gibbons wasn't for everybody either. Like, what you see is what you get with me. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. I know Bowles is real close to team. I think I'm on like my 6th or 7th women's coach since I've been here.
Wow.
So Greg Wilson, Tess, Teamer, Clint for a minute, and then maybe now Millette, maybe 5th or 6th. Maybe I probably forgot somebody. But no, I think I'm here. I really do. I don't envision myself coaching when I'm 68 years old, 55 years old. I realize there's the rainbow is close to the end. I still got years left in me. I still like to recruit. I like to coach. Some of the other stuff I don't like to do. But no, I don't envision myself leaving. I really don't. I think I'll finish my career at Augusta. Well,
that's great for us Georgia Hoop fans and D2 fans and Augusta fans especially. Kind of a neat thing, I think I've said this before on here, but when you're able to sustain and last, some people say that's winning. Some people say that's not. I'm not sure which one. That's an argument we could have for another day, but I think it's winning. I think you've done a hell of a job there. So we're going to take it into the lightning round.
Okay.
Shot clock's on. Big deal here in Georgia high schools. So Bowles will run the shot clock. and hopefully run it
You have to
better.
be certified to do that shot clock. In
Do you
Georgia.
got to take a test, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, because this year during the 100 black men tournament, the referee kicked the girl player off because she wasn't certified. And I said, "What's the plan? Where are you going to get the certified one? Down to Circle K?" So yeah.
Real quick, are they going to be certified? And I'll get killed for naming names, but Swainsboro, Forest Park High, Tri-Cities.
I have a feeling it's not going to be. Yes.
I'm just asking. I don't know. All right. So we go through these. Obviously, if you have a great story, run with it.
Yep.
We're not going to stick to the shot. We will have uncertified shot clock workers. We'll be friendly.
All right.
All right. I'll start us off. I always leave basketball for a minute, talk a little food. What was your foodie? Where was your place to go when you were at Belmont Abbey? What was the place you were going to grab lunch if you had to do lunch with somebody?
Sub Corral, which is in Belmont. The guy was a student when I was a student there. He ran the place. He was a big Boston Red Sox fan.
Mhm.
You know, not to say I'm something. You know, my wife taught me this lesson years ago. She worked for named Bill Bompard. He didn't believe in lunch hours. Okay, he didn't believe in taking lunches. And I'm like, well, what? You know, as assistant, I would take a lot of lunches. When I was head coach, I'd bring my lunch in more times than not. But Belmont Abbey, two places, Sub Corral, a place called Last Stop. The Last Stop was the last place we stopped after having a few drinks on the way home to me and my wife. So my daughter was 4 years old. She's in the car with my parents. And she said, "Hey, why don't we stop at Last Stop?" Now, that was not the name of the place, Last Stop. We just called it the Last Stop. Same thing at Belmont Abbey, you could drink beer in the office after the game. Okay. So I would put beers in Roger Ayers and Mike Eads' lockers, you know, it was okay. It was allowed. So, yeah, the Last Stop in Belmont, but probably Sub Corral. In Augusta's T-Bones, no question. T-Bones is the place.
Oh, you got me. I was just about to go to Augusta, so you go T-Bones. What about your daughter being in the family business? How is that?
Same thing somebody told me, same thing told you, don't do it. She's working with Kevin Pedersen up at Coastal. Very fortunate, work for Joni Taylor at Georgia, unbelievable human being. Joni gets the job at Texas A&M while we're in Evansville for the national tournament. I'm like, what happened? And I'm like, you're not going to Texas, are you? And she's, I don't think so. And then Kevin reaches out. Next thing you know, she's at Coastal Carolina. She's working. She's loving it, which I don't want to do it. She's way too smart to do this stuff, but she has a passion for it. She's definitely brilliant. Math major at University of Georgia, got her master's. I mean, yeah, shouldn't be coaching, I can tell you that. But.
All right, well, I'm going to love this one. I ask this one all the time to guys. I'm going to love your answer, I think you'll have a good one. What's the one time you thought maybe you arrived and you got humbled a little bit? We've all been there in coaching.
Dip Beatrice at Augustana University. I was at a banquet with my wife, and I don't know where. It must have been when I was here. And I think it was in Atlanta, the Final Four, at the Champions Lincoln. Dip Beatrice at Augustana University. That put it in perspective. I think it was the year we lost the national championship. So, yeah. Or they call me Drip or Dip. Yeah. I'm not that important, man, in the great scheme of things. But yeah, Dip Beatrice, Augustana University, no question.
That's a good one. All right, all these great places we've mentioned that you've played at with rivals and games. Give me the worst place you play. I know the worst locker room might have been Clayton State back when you used to have to share the bathrooms with the crowd. But give me
the bathroom. Gordon Gibbons, you got to take a piss with the fans, Dipper.
Worst place you played as far as like facility.
All right. David Coker, because the second floor, you can't describe it. Okay. Locker rooms underneath the gym. Okay. However, I'll go back. Belmont Abbey, we played Barber Scotia. Okay. Barber Scotia is in Concord, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It's historical black college. Okay, I'll go way back. Blue tops, white pants, because you couldn't afford the two different pants, like the old Coolidge high school, White Shadow days.
Yeah.
So we're going to play at Barber Scotia. Kevin Eastman's the coach, Mr. Preparation. He gets me after the game. He said, "Dip, I don't understand. I don't like the focus of the players on our team right now." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "I don't like the focus. They weren't paying attention." I said, "Coach, that's because written on the wall in chalk was Coach Payne's matchups from the year before. So 1 year later, that wall hadn't been cleaned. Okay. So we go out and play Barber Scotia. And what a terrible gym. It's in Concord, North Carolina. I think the school still exists. But that was probably one of the worst places ever. Yeah, guys smoking weeds, or I mean, it was unbelievable.
All right, I got two more quick ones.
All right.
Best crowd you coached at, excluding your own at Augusta, excluding your own at Belmont. Best crowd on the road.
You know, people love to make fun of me, so I got a lot of places. They come after me hard, and I don't really care. And to be honest with you,
You kind of engage.
I kind of egg into it. You know, it's like Leader's crowd. Leader got in trouble because during COVID, their fans were yelling at us and all that stuff. And they violated code rules, and everybody's complaining. I was like, I thought it was great, you know. So,
We're alike in that way, Dip.
that doesn't bother me. So best crowds, you know, that's a good one. You know, we played in different places. Obviously we played some Division I people, but they're exhibition games. I really don't off the top of my head. You know, I really don't. You know, I'm very appreciative of the fans we have in Augusta. Look, I realize that Division II or junior college basketball, there are nights you're going to play in front of 25 people. That's just part of what it's about, you know. But when you're able to gain some momentum and really get into an environment, it's a fun thing to do.
The guy that I played for, Jimmy Hebron, his assistant was Dennis Walsh, who had been Division I everywhere. And he used to always say in D2, it's a lot of MCI crowds, friends and family only.
Yeah.
He would say that all the time. Friend, is it an MCI crowd tonight? He would always say that. But all right, my last one, you've coached and won some unbelievable games. And we try to mention some of this stuff because I know you won't throw it out there, but, you know, winning at South Carolina, you know, a year or two after they were in the Final Four, you know, you've won some of those exhibitions and games against Division I's. You've also been in, you know, 2 championships. You've been in multiple Final Fours, multiple Elite Eights, you know, multiple conference championships. You had a winning season every year except your first 2. I mean, it could go on and on and on and on. Here's what I want to throw at you. What's the most memorable loss? I set you up with all the good to go to the bad, because as coaches, we remember the loss way more anyway. What's the one loss that sets with you still to this day? Mine would be a semifinal game, Central Georgia Tech. We shouldn't have lost. We missed 2 free throws after we were up 14 with 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Terrible loss. I still remember. You're good.
That's a tough question. Okay. Because I'm not a guy that loses the last game and watches that film, because I'm moving on to next year. Like, okay,
Correct.
So we lost the national championship game. We're going to lose 1 player off this team, you know, that played significant minutes. I'm not worried about that game anymore. I'm worried about the first game.
Correct.
Probably one of the most disheartening losses was we were a 2 seed, or I don't remember. We were hosting the regional tournament. It was our 5th year of hosting the regional tournament. We had been to 3 straight Elite Eights. We lost to Anderson on our home floor in the championship game. We had 2 free throws to go up to seal the game. We missed 2 free throws. They go down and score. It goes into overtime. We lose to Anderson, and Anderson goes to Elite Eight when Jason was coaching there. That was probably a tough one, because we were sitting there staring at going back to our 4th straight Elite Eight. You know, the term Elite Eight is not a term you throw out lightly. Like, it just happens, you know. So, like, to get to Elite Eight Division II level was really hard, and we were getting ready to go there for the 4th time. And there's a disappointment with our players, and you know, but that would probably might be the most disappointing one because of the magnitude of what would happen. Yes.
Jeff will probably appreciate that. No,
Yeah. So
knocked off his boss.
yeah. So, but it was, you know, that was a tough one because it was on our home floor. And I tell you what, as a player, we lost Coach Payne's last year. My sophomore year is the best team I ever played on. We lost to then Atlantic Christian College, coached by Gary Edwards, at Belmont Abbey. One of my best friends, equipment manager, New Orleans Pelicans. They cut down the nets at Belmont Abbey's gym, and he refused to put the nets up on the gym for like 2 weeks. So every time you walked in the gym, you saw the nets cut down. You know, that was, as a player, no doubt, because that was the best team I ever played on, and we didn't make the nest tournament. Yes.
Tough. All right, Bowles, lightning round will go to you.
All right, coach. So now we'll go to my lightning round questions here. First question is revisiting an old podcast. Nate Teamer said you guys would go watch practices. I want to know who the best practice that you've ever gone to. Who would that be?
Have to be Bob McKillop at Davidson. Combination of intensity, attention to detail is unlike anybody else's. Probably seen over 75 different colleges practice, and his attention to detail is off the charts. It's beyond comprehension for us coaches.
There you go. So the next one is a shot clock violation type question. Earlier we talked about Herbert Green being the coach's coach, but I wanted to ask about your coaches clinics. They've kind of famous or infamous, however you want to look at it, in Georgia. But can you talk about where those came from, how it happened, how it started, and where it's going from here?
Yeah, did a coaching clinic, was head coach at Belmont Abbey, kind of modeled after Coach Green's clinic. You know, the old-fashioned bring people in a classroom, sit them around a board, and X and O, had player development people, had different thoughts and different concepts. Did it at Belmont Abbey for a number of years, came to Augusta, started the concept. Corey spoke at one of my first ones, on the floor demonstrations. Got away from that just because it's so hard on the players. You have to worry about NCAA rules on what you can and can't do with players on the floor. Then I got invited to go to Matt Driscoll's clinic in North Florida. I had no idea I was getting into it. As soon as I took part of that, I said, this is what I want to do. And basically stole Matt's idea of 2 hours of situation basketball, have a little lunch, possible, guest speaker, but only 30 minutes. And then open it up for 2 hours of whatever wanted to be discussed. One year I had coaches send me topics and I pulled them out of a hat and said, okay, show me your best drill against pressure. Show me your best drill against fighting traps. And just kind of did a random thing and let conversations go where they want to go for 2 hours. And just kind of morphed into something we do Friday after Labor Day from 10 to 3. And, anybody's invited. It's nothing top secret. I just got to know the number of sandwiches we have. I upgrade. I have sandwiches. I don't have pizza for that one. So it's been a pretty good thing for us, and people really enjoy coming here through the years.
Awesome.
No, I spoke at the first one, Bowles, that he had in Augusta. Bert did the ball handling, had people sweating and getting after it, and then I tried to put in the press with Dips guys. I think they were a little rattled. I think Leader spoke at it. It was a real good deal, and then I came back maybe 2 or 3 years ago and riled up some people saying you could only play man-to-man and man-to-man on inbounds and man-to-man on full court.
Corey came in and definitely riled the troops up a little bit. He got on his Gordon Gibbons soapbox talking about only man-to-man. And here I am up at a clinic and say, hey, throw a 2-3 zone at people because you never know what their zone offense is going to look like. So, yeah, he had some people like, who was that guy from that junior college? I said, well, he did a great job. So, no, the clinics are good because, to be honest with you, I want interaction. I want coaches talking. A lot of side conversations go on, but sometimes bring it back to point. But no, it's been good through the years. And, it's like I said, it's this great little clinic, and I'm glad I do it. And we've had 2 years of not doing it. And we'll do it again this year.
So I've been told if you want to go to it, you better be prepared because you're going to get called out. So you got to have something ready.
Yeah, Teamer, I thought about that. Teamer invited somebody one day. I don't remember who it was. You'll have to ask Teamer. And I said, okay, here we go. This first situation, down 4, 12 seconds to go, baseline out. And I threw the pen at him. That guy looked like I stole his wallet. He was so petrified to get up there. And
that's hilarious.
It's good for especially young coaches. Situation basketball is something that either you work on a lot or don't work on, but I tell you this, you have to be prepared for it. I've always enjoyed it, and I look forward to getting it going again this year.
Good deal. So the next one, a little bit faster, a little bit better of a shot clock question. If you could take a coach, current, former, whatever, and you could say, I want to watch this guy. There's a guy I like to take a lot from. Who would it be, and why would you pick them?
Ironically, I told my wife that the other day. I was reading an article on Kelvin Sampson. He's a Pembroke grad. I don't know him. I don't know his son, but what he's done at Houston is remarkable. Read a lot of things on him. He's just, kind of an old school coach, winning in a new style era, and he's got some special sauce over there. And I know he kind of hangs his hat on toughness and rebounding, but I think he's one of the best coaches in the country that I'd love to spend 2 or 3 days with.
Nice.
And he has Bobby Champagne as a ops guy, a former D2 guy, right?
I tell you what, great story about Bobby Champagne. He goes to North Alabama. He's at North Alabama, makes the Elite Eight with us 1 year. And he shows up at the banquet. I'm like, Bobby, where you been? And I didn't really know. He's we went toward the ESPN studios. He was like on a spring break trip up there. He had a unique approach. And they kind of came in. And I was our second or third one. And they were not dressed properly, but once it was dressed properly, they came right from like going to the ESPN studios looking for Dan Patrick, I guess. So Bobby's a good guy. That would be an in, no doubt.
Yeah.
Nice.
All
right. So
maybe a future guest for us too. All right, go ahead, Bowles.
That's right. 2 more. I got 2 more, and then we'll be out of here. So Corey gets the fun ones. He gets to talk about food. He gets to talk about the worst gyms. I get the more academic questions. I get to ask you, Coach, what's the best book recommend to a young coach, old coach, anybody? What would you recommend is a good book for somebody?
There's a book that Anson Dorrance wrote, women's soccer coach in North Carolina. Competitive Cauldron is part of the basis of it. Unbelievable book, just about coaching and teaching and trying to get kids to be locked in. It's an older book now. I read it my first year in coaching. He's one, like I said, I'm a book nerd. I'm reading 3 or 4 books right now. Anything, like I said, I read Will Smith's autobiography because Joni Taylor was reading on a plane going to a road trip and told my daughter it was a great book. And it was a great book, definitely a unique book. Yeah. And like I said, I'm a big reader, and I put my hands on anything and read something on Snyder, who coached Kansas State football. Anything, just read. Somebody gave me that advice when I first get in coaching, to read as much as you possibly can. And it's true, you should spend an hour plus reading.
See, the younger guests, they always want to throw a podcast to us. We like when we get the old school hands-on books and all that. That's a nice change.
Yeah, I never even evolved to that Kindle thing. I'm still a book guy.
Nice. All right. Last one is a 2-part question. Want to ask you the best player you've coached and then the best player you've coached against. So kind of I know it's a hard one in as many years, as many good teams as you had, but just give us your best look at these guys.
Well, since he tortured us in the national championship game, the kid from Northwest Missouri was special. Knew he was returning player of the year. He's a winner, tough shot maker. He's a special guy, special time, and special moment. So I would definitely put him as one of the best I ever coached against. I don't like to talk about the best I've coached. I was coaching at Belmont Abbey. I coached some good players here at Augusta. But had a lot of All-Americans, a lot of player of the year types. Byron Johnson from Saluda, Virginia was probably my first good one at Belmont Abbey. Skinny kid. Didn't know where Saluda, Virginia was, so I looked at a map. It's kind of the intercoastal part of Virginia. I still don't know where it is. Never been there. Good story about Byron. Byron came for open workout in North Carolina t-shirts. Let's sign this kid. Offer him a scholarship afterwards, and he calls me. He said, "Coach, how are the dorms?" I said, "Oh, they're great. They're super." He never went to a dorm room, never went to a classroom building, never met with a teacher, never talked about study hall. He was an English major. Played in Argentina for about 10 years. And at Augusta, there's way too many to name, but A.J. Bowman was the first great one. Saw A.J. in high school in an all-star game. He jumped over a table. I picked up the phone and called Greg Marshall at Winthrop, called Byron Samuels at Radford, and said, "Hey, you should recruit this guy." Well, they don't recruit him. I come in and get the job. Tell the AD, I said, "Can I meet with a player before I sign my contract?" He said, "I can do whatever you want." So I went up to Tignall, Georgia, and I sat down with AJ at Washington Wilkes High School and said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to be named new head coach at 2:00 at Augusta." This was 10:00 in the morning. And he's looking at me like, "What?" I say, "I'm gonna be the coach." Looked at the news tonight, sign him in 4 weeks, 4 years later, is All-American. So AJ was the first great one here, but like I said, can't really name the other ones. They're all so good.
There you go.
Awesome.
Coach,
Well,
that was our last one, but we'll let Corey kind of take you down the road here, and then we'll close you out.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to close it with, Dip? Something maybe you didn't get to mention, or something you want to give to young coaches out there listening, or just
Really just, like give back to the game. If you're a first year coach, you can give to a rec league, older guy like myself. That's why I have clinics. I'm always open for people to come practices. I still love coaching. I have seen every coach at university. The only thing good about coaching changes in the state of Georgia is it's just a new team I can watch practice,
Right.
new coach. So Mike White's now the coach of Georgia. This will probably be the fourth or fifth Georgia coach. Dennis Felton, the guy who's in California now, and then Crean. So I just go watch practice, invite myself in there, Georgia State, Kennesaw. So, like I said, just keep growing and loving this game. It means a lot to me.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you coming on here.
We appreciate you for being a true coach's coach and reaching out to high school and everybody in the state. So we appreciate you being on, and those that are listening, you can keep up with our podcast on social media. Instagram is @OffBeatenPath Podcast, and Twitter is @OffBeatenPath_. Thanks for listening to our Off the Beaten Path podcast.
And again, thanks to Coach Metris, a guy I've got to coach against. I've had him come and recruit guys here, and been in his clinics and everything. He is kind of the mayor of, or the governor really, of Georgia, college basketball at all levels. So we're glad he was on here. Appreciate your time. And this is a podcast for those who want to coach, those who used to coach, those who currently coach, those who follow and help out coaches, and those who hire and fire coaches. Appreciate your time again, Dip. Appreciate y'all listening out.